In the Groove was created to discuss music, education, and serving the local community through the Artist Outreach Initiative. The Artist Outreach uses creative talent and an innovative method to teach core curriculum. In the Groove is proudly sponsored by Monk Wilson Mandala, Trials, Transactions, Technology. The Artist Outreach is a Dallas-based nonprofit that uses all types of art forms as a way to engage people toward a better education. Joseph Vincelli, the chief executive and founder, is an inventor and patent holder, an author, a recording artist who has toured the globe under his own name, played the national anthem for 20 years for the Dallas Mavericks and the Dallas Stars. Because of his vision and drive for music, he even had a day named after him in Austin, Texas, and was given the key to the city in 3 Texas towns. Joseph initiated the Artist Outreach to help non-musicians understand how music and the arts connect to every facet of our world. And he designed a unique methodology to teach students academic subjects like math and language through music and dance.
This segment of In the Groove is sponsored by Bank of Texas.
Hi everyone, I'm Joseph Vincelli, the Chief Executive of the Artist Outreach and your host of In the Groove. Today, I thought we'd talk about something that is really near and dear to us at the Artist Outreach, creativity. I give presentations around the state and really around the country on creativity because educators understand how important creativity is. In fact, Sir Ken Robinson, who's famous on TED Talks, he made a statement that education kills creativity. I don't think it's so much education. I think it's administration that kills creativity. And all of you that have jobs that have a lot of administration to your job, you realize how bogged down your mind gets. And the more bogged down it is, the harder it is to open up to creativity. So I thought we'd do like a 10-minute exercise on creativity. So I'm going to give you a learning piece here and teach you how it works with the Artist Outreach and how it works in your brain. And then I'll give you some activities that you can do on your own in the future. Okay, so this first thing I want to bring up, go ahead, Sarah, bring up the first slide. If you have a child that's under 25 years old, you certainly know this one, STEM. STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. Very, very popular in education. And STEAM is adding the arts. Well, if you see here, it takes basically a very basic looking tree and adds a lot of color. And that's what the arts do. They help engage you. And so we're called the Streamliners because we add reading, R for reading. So that's what the stream is. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is how it works in your brain. The imagination, okay, maybe you remember this from 42nd Street, Miracle on 42nd Street, but the Santa Claus says that there's the British nation and the French nation, and he says, then there's the imagination. Well, the imagination is really your place to explore inside your head. And no one else knows about what's going on in your mind until you decide to tell everyone, whether it's through some kind of painting or a speech or something creative. And then the next level is obviously creativity, and then underneath that is problem solving. So what's very interesting about creativity and problem solving is that they work in the brain next to each other. We've talked about this in other podcasts, but you know, everyone thinks that the left brain is for the analytical side, which would be your problem solving, and your right brain is for your creativity side. Well, they're now finding out that it's a whole brain activity, and it actually stems together in the back of the brain. In fact, when they've done studies with rap artists versus improvisers of jazz, the improviser of jazz would have an MRI that would show up like a Christmas tree, whereas the memorizer, the rapper, would only be in one area. And so as you use creativity in your brain, it actually activates your whole body, especially your mind. So you know, it's just great to exercise these things for Alzheimer's patients, but really everyone. I've been doing it my entire life, and it's over 5 decades of time that I've been creative. Next slide. So this is what's really important. Problem solving versus creativity. These are very, very similar, as you see. They both require abstract thought, some form of improvisation and experimentation. They make you feel more authentic. They give you a license to a dream. Next slide. But the main thing is that you're using improvisation to get to creativity. So again, imagination is your internal idea. It's your idea. No one's going to take it from you. That's what's cool about it. It's origination. And creativity is when you have now executed something in some kind of creative format, and then you're letting the rest of the world know about it. But the way we get there is through improvisation. Next slide. Creative completion offers, like I said, ownership, authenticity, a home for evaluation and personal connectivity. Why is this so important? There's a thing in education called social emotional learning, SEL. And especially as a post-pandemic world, students really need to be more mentally at ease because of the pressures that the digital world brought on them, not to mention the medical world. So we want to add more creativity to all of us, not just students, but all of us. Next slide. So I just wanted to explain that there's actually 4 different models of creativity. I'm going to start with the big one on the right there. The big C would be your Steve Jobs or anyone of that nature, Bill Gates, someone who really can think globally in a creative way and actually change the world. Well, then there's professional creators. That would be someone like me, who's actually made a living creating ideas all the time. Then there's your little c, which would be people who are hobbyists, but also go to the point of maybe selling their wares at a festival. And then finally, the mini c is, hey, you decided to take a recipe and change up a couple of the spices, and now it's become your creative, spin on it. Or maybe you paint at home, but you don't like to show anybody. A lot of presidents have done that, as you know, and artists. It's very interesting to see how they cross over with their creativity. Once you get the practice of creativity, you start to use it in different ways. Okay, next slide. I love this. Those that don't hear the music think the dancers are mad. Okay, so if you see a bunch of dancers just jumping around and it's silent, you're thinking that they're crazy. But in sense, they're actually feeling something that's inside of them. And they're allowing themselves to express, self-expression. This is a very important thing because as we get older, not only do our brains harden, but we get more tight fisted when it comes to doing things that would embarrass us. A 5-year-old doesn't have any inhibitions. They just do things. And, by the time we're 15, we get a little bit more careful and, so we have to really push that envelope. And I think it's extremely important to do it as you get, past 25. Next slide. So the slide is a little odd here, but think you can figure it out. SEL stands for social emotional learning. It's overcoming fear. It's learning how to get past your fears. And that's what creativity does, because as you build your creativity and you feel good about it, you then feel like you can go to the next level and keep doing that. And that's what jazz musicians do. We've had conversations with Joel and I. Joel McRae is our music producer for the Artist Outreach, and we talk about the communications that we have where we're pushing the envelope all the time because we know we're going to be okay. And so we keep pushing that so that we can explore and find out bigger and better things. And we do it through jazz, but you can do it through any kind of creative outlet. Okay, it doesn't have to be music or dance or even an art form. It could be just a speech or, like I said, a recipe. All right, next. So I wrote a book called The Art of Tone, Understanding Our Love for Music. Go ahead and bring up the next slide. And the whole concept behind this was to help people understand how music can be expressed in many different ways. It wasn't teaching you how to play the saxophone or the flute or the piano. There's plenty of books on that. It's teaching you how to build your own confidence level. And fear is one of the biggest components. Fear is a little dark room where negatives are developed. Bring up the next slide. I like this one too. Fear stands for false evidence appearing real. In other words, this is what our holdup is. So whether we have writer's block or some kind of other fear, it a lot of times just makes us careful about wanting to go further. when you have a creative completion, in other words, when you complete that process of the dangling imagination swirling around and using your improvisation and starting to piece things together, it starts to create a foundation of creativity. And as you have that, say, hey, would you like to see my creativity? Would you like to see my creativity? Would you like to see my creativity? And of course, the more confident you get in that, and the more people say, hey, you know, that's really good. You get more excited about it, and you overcome those fears. Next slide. The other thing that it does is creativity adds positive attitude, without question. We develop a lot of songs with students, whether they're age 10 or age 18. And it's part of the SEL program, Social Emotional Learning. The purpose is so that they understand how to explore, how to find ideas within lyrics, of their own lyrics, and of course their own song ideas with the music producer. This is terribly important when we're working with students who are in at-risk situations. We work with a lot of shelters where they don't have the opportunity to be in a structured situation all the time. Their home life is in a very difficult situation. And so these things become extremely important. This is where creativity becomes even more important. You know, I'm an ADD adult, and creativity helped me get over it. Now that's just me, but I can tell you everybody benefits from creativity. Next. Creative completion, that's my coined phrase. Creative completion, completing the process, builds this positivity, as I mentioned earlier. The positivity and the positive attitude makes you want to do more creativity, and it fuels each other over and over and over again. Next slide. This is my favorite, neoteny. This is a word I actually heard on TED Talks one time. I thought it was pretty interesting. It means to have like a childlike attitude. Not childish, but childlike. And the opposite of play is not work. They've studied this. The opposite of play is not work, it's depression. So when you're not playful, when you're not playing in some kind of capacity, you then your mind starts to get depressed. And of course, the longer you do that, the less playful you'll be and the less happy you'll be. Now, part of that is being vulnerable, learning how to take chances and open up yourself. As a young jazz musician, as I learned more and more improvisation, I didn't know where I was going with the music. That's the whole idea. You're trying to learn, well, maybe I'll take it this way, or maybe I'll try it this way. And you kind of build that idea. And so I'm not telling you this just from experience or even from a philosophical standpoint. I want you to do it because I think that your activities will change your life. It truly will change your life. There's nothing better than when you own something through some kind of creative element. Okay, next slide. The egometer. Okay, so essentially I call this the egonomer because the more protection you have in your life, the less vulnerable you are. It's like salt and pepper. You know, you want to add as much vulnerability when you're creating as possible because it adds more elements of creative imagination. Next slide. All right, so how do we do it? So here's some basic things that you can do every day. Okay, it's just like exercise. If you don't have to sit there and try to become a rock star athlete in one day. Do it over time, but awaken the imagination through the five senses. Listen to harmonic music. That means your favorite music, and try to listen to instrumental music, not music with anything else. Taste some really vibrant food that will explode in your mouth, like pineapple or something like that. Feel a soft pillow. Just simple things like that, and become real with it. Mindful of these things. Smell a fragrant flower. Stare at abstract paintings. Look at the stars at night. I mean, like really look at a lot of stars. And you start seeing geometry in the stars and how their patterns are, and it's so cool. But it starts to open up your mind to become more abstract. That's why a lot of great business owners have abstract paintings inside of their offices. And then finally, turning on just basic classical music a lot of times can bring you there. Quieting the mind, giving yourself an opportunity. This is one of the things that we have to struggle with in our modern day. And I wrote about it in my book back in 2003. But we have so much noise going on in our world from cell phones and computers and car noises and motors and things like that, that it becomes very difficult to quiet ourselves. But as we quiet ourselves as an activity, we start to explore and come up with more ideas. So it might help your business. It might help you just have a great day. It might help your family. So there's a lot of things that it can do. We use it to help explore ideas to help students learn academics. But there's a lot of ways you could use it. Okay, so that's my message for you today. If you'd like to learn more from us, email me, director@theartistoutreach.org. Go to theartistoutreach.org, call me. I'd be glad to talk to you about this. It's my favorite subject in the world to talk about, is how to explore creativity for you. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Joseph Vincelli, the Chief Executive of the Artist Outreach. I appreciate you listening today, and we want to thank our sponsors for all the good that they're doing so that we can bring these programs to you.